This is a bold statement, but no matter what job you're doing, being skilled at Excel can help your career tremendously. So whether you are interested in data or you have no idea how to use Excel, this video is going to help you. We're going to cover an introduction to formulas, and it is a solid foundation that doesn't take too long to learn. We're going to look at some pretty popular functions like your sum, counts, average, maximums, XLOOKUP, which is a modern version of VLOOKUP, cleaning text, etc. Really useful stuff. But before we get going, if you could subscribe to my channel, it means a lot to me. I post content like this all the time, and let me know what else I should cover. With that being said, let's get to it. All right, so I have my Excel opened. I am using Office 365 and I have the link available in the video description if you want to download this file and go along with me. And what I'm going to do is I am going to pretend that you are an absolute beginner in Excel. You are going to pretend that I am an expert, and we're going to be learning about formulas. So let's just get to it. This is my table on Excel. It's a really simple table. We have a date, we have a customer type, we have the customer name. As you can see, very messy. Our objective is to clean this customer name. We have the unit price of the item that the customer bought. We have the cost price of the item that the customer bought. We have the quantity, so how many items the customer bought, and then the total sales, which would be quantity times unit price gives us total sales. And I have some columns, profit and discount, which I have left blank because we are going to be calculating it. Cool. And before we begin, one thing that's really important on Excel is that every cell in Excel, so every little block here, actually is assigned or referenced. So we can see we have columns here which we have letters, and we have rows here which we have numbers. So this cell here where it says date is actually A1, and this cell here where it says customer type is actually B2. Why is that important? Well, because on Excel a reference is the actual cell value. So if we go to any sort of cell on our sheet, so let's go to B16 and type in equal sign. As soon as you type in equal sign on Excel, it knows you're about to type in a formula or a function. You don't have equal sign, it doesn't know that you are typing in a formula, you're not going to get the results that you want. So equal sign, and let's just type in C2. We can see C2 gets highlighted, and if we press enter, we can now see that this is an exact copy of C2. And that's known as cell references. And if you click on D16 and go to the top here, you'll notice the formula bar will note what exactly you've typed in. If you press enter, it goes back. So let's click on D16, let's backspace. And I want you to have a look at the sales column, because this sales column is actually a calculation. So if we click on G2 and go to our formula bar, we notice G2 is equal to D2 times F2. And if we go to G3, G3 is equal to D3 times F3. And you'll find out that no matter what cell you click here, your formula bar will represent the actual calculation. This is an actual formula. So let's just remove the column. So from G2 to G13, you can select it and delete it, or press backspace so that everything is gone and it looks like this. And let's do it from scratch. So on G2, let's type in equals. And now we can either type in D2, or we can go and click D2. It will give us the same result, multiplied by F2, which is a quantity. So we're saying unit price times quantity, and press enter. Cool, we have sales. Now what we can do is we can do exactly the same thing where I say equals, and I'll say D2 times that by F3 and press enter. We can do that. Or what we can do is we can go to G2, make sure it's clicked, go to the bottom right until our cursor turns into a plus sign, click and drag it all the way down. And now what's this done is that it has applied this throughout where we selected, and it's also moved one down. When we click and drag one down, our cells within our formula moves one down, as you can see. And the same thing is if I click and drag across, so I'm clicking G2 and I'm dragging across to H2, just out of interest stakes, and double clicking on this, what do we notice? that this formula actually moved one to the right because I dragged one to the right, which is interesting. And then just a quick note, if you do want to have like an addition, you can. So this would add unit price and quantity. A divide would divide unit price by quantity, etc. I'm going back to multiply. So quickly, how would we do profit? So profit would be equal to our sales minus that by our cost. And our cost is this, our cost times our quantity. So we can say in brackets our cost, which is E2, multiplied by our quantity, which is F2. And press and enter. Cool, that gives us a profit. And if we click and drag, okay, this now applies the formula across every active row. Now, what if we want to actually sum up sales here? So maybe on F14, I want to say total. And to sum up, we can do something like this. So we can say equals, we can say G2 plus G3 plus G4 and so on. But that takes way too long. So Excel has come up with a neat function called sum, which is very popular. And functions are just pre-packaged calculations. So if we say equal sum, open brackets, and now we can input a range. So either you can input maybe G2, semicolon, so Excel tells you what you need to do, and now you need to choose a second number, so let's just choose G3, and close it, and in theory this should sum up just G2 and G3. Cool, and that looks like the sum of that. But what if we wanted to sum up this whole range here? Let's go back to G14, let's double click, and now instead of saying sum G2 semicolon G3, all we're going to do is we're going to click on G2, we're going to drag until G13, and we're going to close brackets. And so now what we can see is we can replace the semicolon with a colon, and colon means range. So we're telling Excel to sum from G2 and end at G13, and press enter. Similar, we can do it with profit. So if we say equals sum, open brackets, H2, let's start with that. Let's click and drag all the way to H13, close brackets, and enter. And now what we can do is we can actually replace this. So if we go back to G14, double click, and let's just say we want the average sales, all we need to do is replace sum with average, like that. And now what we're telling Excel is let's get the average from G2 to G13. And if we press enter, this is now the average. So if we wanted the minimum sales, let's type in min, open brackets. Let's click and drag from G2 to G13, close brackets, and enter. Now it's giving us the min sales we made for the month within the selection, which is in November, we only made 7,240 sales. Similar, if we click back to G14, let's replace min with max. Now, what is the max sales we made between G2 and G13? If we press enter, the max sales is 604,170. Okay, let's just change that back to sum. All right, that's looking good. Now, always remember with your formulas, especially something like profit, your normal BODMAS mathematical operations still apply. The second important thing is how to do if statements on Excel. So if statements are basically functions on Excel where you give Excel a condition, such as if your customer type is a member, and you give Excel that condition and you tell Excel if this condition is met, so if customer type is a member, you must output A. And if customer type is not a member, so if customer type is normal, you output B. If statements are where you give Excel a specific condition and that condition will have a specific output. If that condition isn't met, it has a different output. So a good example we can use here is in our discount column, I want to give users that are members a discount of 20%. If a customer type is a normal, they just get a discount of 10%. We can actually use the if statement for that. So if we type in on I2 equal sign, and let's type in if, open brackets, and now you see Excel will tell us, well, what do we need? We need a logical test. And a logical test just basically means a column needs to have some sort of condition. So in our case, our customer type needs to be member, then the discount must be 20%. If it's not member, if it's anything other than member, the discount is 10%. So we are saying if B2 is equal to, and open quotation marks and type in member, just like how you see it on your data set, and close your quotation marks. So if B2 is equal to member, the reason why we put it in quotation marks is when you are in your formula bar and you are working with letters or combination of numbers and letters, you need to put it in quotation marks. If you're just working with numbers, you don't need quotation marks. That's just a general formatting rule. Okay, so if you're developing a formula and if it is a letter, a character, or a string, always put it in quotation marks. So we're saying, okay, Excel, if B2, so if our customer type B2 is equal to a member, semicolon, what should Excel output if this condition is true? So let's just say the output is a 20% discount. You can just have it just as is. And now what happens if the output is false? So if B2 is not a member, that means the customer type is normal, and the output would be 10%. Close brackets and press enter. Perfect. So we know that members get 20%. Let's do our handy trick of clicking the bottom right and dragging down. And let's check. So normal customers have 10% discounts, members have 20%, and that looks pretty good. The other thing we can do also is have AND statements. So if we create a column called customer level, let's make it a bit bigger, and let's bring in AND. So we're going to say equals AND, and the AND statement here is it returns true if you input any number of conditions and the conditions are all together true. So a good example of this would be if my customer type is a member and my quantity of sales is greater than 500, then the customer level should be high. All right. So for this row here, this would be true because customer type here is member, quantity is more than 500. So this customer level would be high, but for AND, it just returns true and false. So if we say AND, open brackets, if B2 is equal to member, semicolon, another condition would be if 2 is greater or equal to 500. Remember, this is numbers, so we don't need any quotation marks there. We just need it for letters. Close brackets. Let's see what this returns. Okay, so this returns a true. And if we just drag it across, you'll see it meets the conditions. So the AND statement says if this condition and this condition is met, it's true. If one of them are not met, then it would return false. Which is nice because what we can do now is we can actually have more than one condition in our if statement. If we say if, open brackets, and let's just say for this logical test, we actually wanted more than one condition. So we say if and our customer type, which is B2, is equal to member. And let's bring in and our quantity, if 2 is greater than equal to 500, close brackets. So that's our logical test that these two conditions need to be met. What happens if these two conditions are met? Let's just say our customer level is high. All right, so that's if it's true. If it's false, our customer level is low. And close brackets. Let's just click and drag. Cool. And now what we can see is that we've inputted two conditions, and if the two conditions are met, it will give us a customer level that's high. If either one of them are not met, it's going to give us a customer level of low. We can also do an OR. And an OR, so if we're replacing AND with OR, all it's doing is that it's just saying, well, either customer type needs to be a member or the quantity needs to be more than 500, then this customer level will be high. Okay, so if either one of these conditions are met, that's why we're using OR, the customer would be high. Otherwise, if none of these conditions are met, it will be low. And for AND, both of these conditions need to be met for the customer to be high. So if we say enter, and we click and we drag, Now you can see everything is high. Why? Well, from the get-go, we know that our quantity is all greater than 500. So regardless of the customer type, because we're using our OR function, our customer level will all be high. Let's talk about text cleaning. So I have this column called name, and it is very, very messy. Okay, we have spaces, we have cap locks, lots is happening. So let's clean that. Let's create another column called name, and on K2, let's type in equals, and I want you to type in trim. Open your brackets and select C2 and close your brackets and type enter. Go back to K2, click the bottom right and drag it. Already you can see what trim does is it makes it look a bit better. Basically what it does here is that it removes any white spaces in front or at the back of your cell, and also any white spaces in between, but it does keep one white space. So you can see now it cleaned up all of our additional spaces over here, and this looks great. Taking one step further, if we put in something called proper, open brackets, and do another close bracket so it looks like this, and enter, and click and drag, what proper does is proper transforms that into sentence case. So if we can see here, what proper does is that it transforms this into sentence case, and now everything's looking neat. If we double click on K2, we can also do upper. So instead of proper, you can type in upper, and that gives you uppercase. If we double click on it again and go lower, this gives you lowercase. If we double click and let's go back to proper, this gives you title case. So let's copy this. So Command or Control C, and go to C2 and click on this arrow by paste and click paste values. And then we can delete this column K. And now lastly, let's talk about XLOOKUP. If you haven't used XLOOKUP before, XLOOKUP is VLOOKUP, but a much more modern version. And here's a good example. XLOOKUP is really good at finding things based on a criteria and returning a separate thing. An example here is that I have names of the customers here, and in another list, in my sheet 2, I have customer names and corresponding emails. Now what I would like to do is on my sheet 1, I want my emails to appear here. How would I do that? So let's create a column next to C, and let's call it emails. And let's type in XLOOKUP, open brackets. We now need our lookup value. So our lookup value here is C2, semicolon, our lookup array. So what array are we going to be using? So our lookup array is, we need to tell Excel where is it going to look up this value. So if we click on sheet 2, so make sure you don't go away from this formula. So if you click on sheet 2, you can see your formula bar changes to sheet 2. And now let's select between A2 to A13, because this is where we're telling Excel you need to look for the values. Go back to sheet 1. Okay. Semicolon. Now we need to tell Excel, okay, where should you output? What are we returning? Okay, where are we going to return the values? So our return array is what are we going to output? So if we go back to sheet 2, and I want to output my emails. So click and drag from B2 to B13, and go back to sheet 1. Perfect. Semicolon. If Excel doesn't find the customer with the corresponding email, what should it output? So let's just say in quotation marks, let's say no email. Close quotation marks. And lastly, match mode, I usually say exact. So the name on this list must be exactly the same as the name on our sheet 2. That's all you need, and close brackets and enter. Okay, so this is my final formula here. And if we press enter, perfect. Now let's just see if we click and drag, what happens. Okay, I know that on D5, Michelle Bethany definitely has an email. So what exactly is happening? Now, if you remember, as we drag one down, our formula and our active cells move one down. So if we look at this formula here, we have C2, and then we have sheet 2, A2 to A13, and sheet 2, B2 to B13. And if we move one row down, we have C3 as a lookup value, and then we have sheet 2, A3 to A14, and sheet 2, B3 to B14, which actually doesn't make sense, because if we just take one of the lookup arrays, so let's look at this one. So on sheet 2, A3 to A14, so I'm just pressing enter. Let's go to sheet 2. And A3 to A14 means that our lookup array is here. So Excel actually misses A2. Okay, because when we moved one down, the whole formula moves one down. So what happens if when we are clicking and dragging down, I want to keep the lookup value, because the lookup value should essentially move one down as we drag our formula one down. But these arrays here need to actually stay constant, right? These arrays can't move if we move our formula one down as we drag. So to do that, all you need to do is type in $ in between your cell references. So in sheet 2, A2, just before the A, type in a $, and just after the A and before the 2, type in a $. And same here. So just before the A in A13, type in a $, and just after the A in A13, type in the $. And what this does is that it fixes the array now, so it doesn't move as you drag. And we do the same here for sheet 2. So it's going to be $B, $2, and then $B, $13, like that. And press enter. Now if we click and drag, perfect. And if we move down, we see that our lookup value changes, so it goes one down, but our arrays still stay from A2 to A13 and from B2 to B13, because we've fixed the cell from moving. And that's how you use XLOOKUP. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, if you are interested in building dashboards on Excel, which by the way would look great on your resume, check out this video where I cover how to build dashboards on Excel from scratch using pivot tables and pivot charts. It can really help you as well. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what else I should cover, and until next time.